Hi, my name's Sal. I'm from Buffalo. Originally, I went down to the city this past year, but really got my start in Buffalo, New York. Went to UB once I graduated. Um, Worked on film like The Purge, just as an office PA, and just kept working my way through the different departments. I have worked in almost every department, but camera is the one that, I like to call home and like my favorite one overall.
All right, Matt, how about you?
I am not originally from Buffalo. I'm from the Albany, Saratoga area in New York. I actually got started in the industry doing news stuff as a camera operator and then shifted over to narrative probably like 5, 10 years after that, and then slowly worked my way up as a director of photography in the industry. Uh, I've worked mostly in camera, but I also do G&E stuff on some of the union things in Buffalo.
Awesome. Before I go to Mandy, really quickly, before I forget, I just want to let you all know that this will be recorded and posted. So if anyone is not comfortable with having their face recorded and shown, you can turn off your camera. Obviously, you can still see us and hear us, but if you're not comfortable being recorded and having this posted showing your face, please just turn off your video. Thank you. All right, Mandy, go ahead. Where are you from and how'd you get into the industry?
I'm originally from Syracuse. I live in Buffalo now. And I got into the industry by I started as an art PA on two different movies, and then I did like 5 other unpaid internships, and then I did a camera internship, and now I've been doing camera ever since.
Listen, sometimes that's the way to go. You got to take those unpaid internships because look where we are now. So sometimes it is like that.
It's a long road.
Definitely not easy. It takes a while. Brett, you're up next. Tell us where you're from and how you got into the industry.
Sure. I'm from Buffalo, born and raised. I went to college for film, but it wasn't really till I moved to New Orleans right after college where I got my first like taste of the film industry. And that first taste was being a full-time extra for like a year, and then trying to become a PA, like a set PA, and I ended up becoming an office PA in a Lifetime movie, where I met this casting director who then wanted me to be a stand-in for a movie called Killing Them Softly. And that's where I fell in love with the camera department, because I was in front of them, being a stand-in, and just seeing what they did, all the gear they got to work with, and that was just super appealing to me. So from then on, it was probably about a year into New Orleans where I decided that camera department was the department for me, and I started hopping around production offices, handing in my resumes with no camera experience on them, and just trying to get a camera internship position. And I finally got one on a movie called The Hot Flashes. So I did that, and I worked for free on that. Met a cool camera operator who brought me on to my next film where I interned for free, called Empire State, which led to the next film that I did for free, called Hate Ship, Friendship. And then I got into the camera union, and then a month later moved back to Buffalo, and the rest is kind of history.
I've known you for about 3 years now, and I had no idea that you worked as an office PA or you were in New Orleans. So this was really interesting to actually hear your story of how you got started. So thanks, Brett.
Yeah.
Alexis, all right, girl, tell us where you're from and how you got into the industry.
Okay, so I was born and raised in Buffalo, and I've been in the industry as little compared to everyone else here with so much more experience, but I've been in it for about 1.5 years now. I started as a set PA. I did an internship last May, and then over the summer I did a camera internship, and then last fall I did another camera internship. So I did a bunch of unpaid work for a while, but now I have my feet in the water and am able to do stuff for money.
That's good. When you go from the unpaid and you actually can start making money in that department, that's when you're like, yes, finally. So next we're going to kind of chat about, you guys are all in the camera department, but you work in different positions within that department. So can you guys all just kind of go through, and obviously, again, we'll keep all of these brief because there's so many of you guys. Just tell us what position you're working in the camera department. So Sal, you're up first.
I float around from position to position a lot. With my production company, I'm usually like the B camera op or first assistant camera. And then on bigger stuff, I usually do digital loading or sometimes second ACing.
So when you guys say what these positions are, can you briefly explain what it is? Because I'm pretty sure you're like B-Cam op and all this. A lot of people might not really understand what that is. So just briefly explain what that, entails.
So for B camera op, that's usually the second camera op. Cameras marked as like A, B, C, and D, if you have that many. And then assistant camera, the first is pulling focus. And then digital loader is the one handling like the media. And then also keeping batteries charged and like all the monitors running, extra kind of stuff.
Got it. So you do a bit of everything.
I dabble.
Matt and Ardona, how about you?
So primarily, I'm in the union as a director of photography. So I basically work with the director to come up with the look of the film. And then I work with a gaffer and a key grip to help me on a technical level, light it to that look. And then I also work with everybody else in the camera department, like the camera operators and stuff to, figure out the motion of the camera, handheld setups, dolly setups, all that kind of stuff.
Got it. So you're the main man on set besides the director.
I don't know about that. There's also like the first AD and there's a lot of other main people on set. It's a big collaboration up there.
DP is one of them though. Obviously got the first AD producers, but besides that, the DP he's one of the
from a creative perspective, yes, I would say so.
Definitely. Miss Mandy?
I usually work as a second AC. There are times where I'll be a first AC, which is focus puller, like Sal said. Second AC is, you're kind of like you're the person who does the slate at a very basic level. And then you're like the organizational base for the department. Everything, you're supposed to know where everything is. And, you're helping build up the camera for every move and all that stuff. And then, yeah, I'm in the union as an AC. It's not separated by first and second. So
if anyone doesn't know what a slate is, Mandy, can you just, kind of say what that is for anyone who might not know?
It's like in the clapboard, you write the scene number and the shot on it, and then you clap it so that you can sync the sound later. And the editor can know what scene it is without, scrubbing through everything and being like, oh, this is scene 43. Like, yeah.
Thank you. All right, Brett, how about you?
Yeah, just to circle back a little bit, just in terms of like the kind of chain of command of the camera industry or the camera department. So every camera has at least, or every movie has at least one camera. A lot of times there's two cameras, but say you're on a single camera shoot, you more often than not have 3 to 4 camera department members in that, like specific to that camera. And usually it'll be the camera operator, which could also be the DP. And then there is the first AC, which pulls focus, which he builds the camera and pulls focus, which is just, you know, getting focus on a shot. And then you always have a second AC, which kind of manages that camera. And if you're the A camera, if it's a 2-camera shoot, that second AC is kind of managing the whole department, and kind of figuring out if equipment goes down. They can, if you're lucky enough to have a loader, they can instruct the loader to order new gear, order expendables, which is kind of like disposable supplies that you use on an everyday basis, like bongo ties, different kinds of tape that are essential for marking actors, and just little doodads and stuff. And then after you have your second AC, you have your loader or camera utility, and the loader is in charge of dumping media and inventory. And when they're not doing media and inventory, they're helping out on set, which is usually setting up monitors for the director, the DP, video village, and things like that. What I've been doing for the past 10 years is second ACing and first ACing. And then more recently, the past year, I've been slowly doing still photography, which has a couple of different uses. A still photographer takes on-set photography, so as the shot is being photographed, the still photographer is taking, usually posted up next to one of the A camera or the B camera, and snapping photos throughout the scene, so they can send to people who might not be on set at that time, be it you know, producers, or you know, maybe you know, editorial department. There's also art stills, which, you know, their art stills are photographs that you set up and talk about with the director and the actors to be used as props, or, you know, practical photos for, like, you know, showing off a vacation in the movie or a wedding, and things of that nature. And then the kind of third big one is kind of gallery shots, which is promotional stuff that you can use for movie posters and just things to advertise the film. Yeah, that's kind of what I do now. I kind of hop between that and AC.
Thanks for breaking it down to everyone, you know, the order and how it kind of goes in the camera department.
It can get confusing.
Yeah, it can. People are like, well, what does this person do on set? Or, you know, obviously, you know, the DP is in charge, but then after that, what is everybody supposed to be doing? So thanks for breaking it down to us and everyone.
For sure.
All right. What's your current position in the industry?
My current position is a second assistant camera.
Awesome. And so I think you guys remember, you know, they kind of talked about what that person does already. So if they're not, you want to just repeat it, what second AC does?
They slate for the camera. They keep camera reports. They, on smaller shoots, like make sure batteries are charged and stuff like that, really just support the camera department as a whole.
All right, so we're gonna kind of get into, you know, what's it like when you're actually, you know, you start working on a job. So sort of what are some of the first things that happen, you know, whether it's like, and I know Sal, you mentioned this, whether it's certain equipment that you should bring, or, you know, the hiring process. And each of you can kind of answer this a different way. If one of you guys want to talk about some things that you should bring to set with you filming, if some of you guys want to talk about what the hiring process is like. So Sal, let's start with you. I know you mentioned this. Talk about what are some things that you should bring on set with you when you're starting out on a job.
There with me. My go-to tools are a screwdriver and Allen keys, both metric and imperial, and then usually dry erase markers and Sharpies. So like the kind of stuff that's just useful to have, like putting the camera together and keeping track of things. Um, and then I also have an earpiece. That's always useful. I don't know specifically. There's a special one for the Motorola walkies that are kind of like the film set standard. But those are like my 5 go-to things to always keep in my bag. And then beyond that, personally, I just have gear based on like the job. So I'll bring different things needed for just different positions.
Does anyone else want to add to some things that you should bring with you to set? Because obviously working in the camera department, it's more of a tangible position. So anybody else want to add things that you should bring or have with you?
You kind of
There's a
headlamp.
lot.
Yeah, there's a long list.
We can't say everything, but things that probably, stand out to you. So we'll go Matt, Mandy, and Brett. Matt, go ahead.
I do a lot of shoots that are overnight shoots, and I find my headlamp invaluable. So I would say get a headlamp in your kit and get really good shoes.
Yeah. Sal covered the basics of like what I would say. I mean, I always have my multi-tool on me. It's got like a ton of different little things that you might need, and then there's hard marks, which like you're gonna need if you're on an outdoor shoot. Mine are tees. Mine are like little metal tees that I've colored different colors for the actors. So like when your actors are blocking a scene, you're gonna drop those down. And then other than your tape leash, which is gonna have your regular tape that you mark the actors with. I don't know, there's just so many things. I have a bag, like a massive bag of just a lot of things that bring with you every day.
And obviously you won't know it all in the beginning. It's kind of something that you'll learn as you work, like, oh, I should have this, or you know what I mean? So it's not like you start off and you guys need to be prepared with this whole massive bag of stuff. You'll learn as you go along. So
Yeah.
Brett, anything else you want to add?
Yeah. Just about every single on-set department runs on a system of carts, and those carts, the camera department uses like could use up to 6 carts on a single show. The bigger the show, obviously, the more you need. But having a cart is so valuable because you're always on the move, and so it's kind of like having a car packed with all your stuff, but with you at all times. And for me, having a cart next to me, as close as possible, is so important because when your first AC or your camera operator or your DP asks for something, they want it within seconds, and you need to have all that stuff in a couple feet away from you. So having a cart that you can customize to your liking is so huge. And if you're on like a small shoot, like a commercial, it might not be as necessary, but if you can fight for a cart on every single shoot, it'll only benefit your performance. And you can find cheap carts like magliners, well, cheap-ish for like $1,000, or you can get amazing ones, a Jaeger or a Backstage for $2,500, or an Innovative for $3,000, however much you want to go. But having a cart is super important. There's also expendables you collect along the way, and some people come with cabinets, plastic cabinets that they can transfer right from their closet to their car to the camera truck, and you have all your expendables that you might need, and then you always order some. So having like a bunch of expendables helps too. Yeah, you'll want a set bag with all the tools that Mandy and Alexis and Sal mentioned, and people have different chest packs or belts that they have to hold all that, because again, quickness is key. If a screw's loose on the camera, that needs to be fixed as soon as somebody addresses the problem. You have to be right there with the tool. So all that stuff is important to have with
Like
you.
with the cart and the chess ones, like you should be organized and have all this stuff so that you're not searching, looking for it. You can just be able to give it directly off to the DP or whoever needs it right away. So
Yeah. And
Uh,
and all of this happens, all of this, you know, organization happens in prep. You know, any union film will have a prep, but you know, your first experience in like the camera world will more than likely be a local commercial or maybe like a small indie movie where you might not have prep at all. But you know, you know, being expected to have all of this is not a requirement for a new camera person, but it's something that you slowly develop over many years. You know, getting all this gear. So it sounds overwhelming at first, but it's a slow process of accumulating.
yeah, I think that was good to say because you scared them when you started talking about, oh, you can get a minimum for 1,000 or 2,500, 3,000. So it definitely helps to know it's not like you need to show up on your first day with a $2,000 cart and all this gear. It is a slow
Yeah.
process that happens.
And what's good is like your first experience will more likely be a camera intern, which it's good to have a lighter, a pen, and like a notepad. That's a good like first, and some gum. If you have gum in your pocket, your first AC is gonna love you. But yeah, it's a slow process, and like it's something that just, you know, happens slowly, and you just accumulate.
Yeah. We're going to talk a little bit about the hiring process because that's always a big one as well. How do I actually, get into the industry? So I'm just going to have a couple of you answer this. I won't have everyone. Matt Nardone, as a DP, what is the hiring process like for a DP to come on to a project?
For me, you have to have some sort of reel of all of your work that you're submitting to whatever job it is that you're trying to get on board for. You have to have a good network of people that you know, because like 90% of getting any job is who you know, sadly. Most of my bigger projects though have been, I worked as just an operator for this company, and then they lost the DP to something else, and they're like, hey, can we bring you up? So that's another way you could get hired, is just being around and being available for people. You know, you might be the second person they go to sometimes, but then there's that one time where you can really shine because you're their first person. So it really varies job to job. Sometimes you have to have a resume if you're in any position under me. Like if I'm hiring somebody, everybody who I hire, I usually get a resume for. See the movies that they've worked on, and see if they're union movies, see if they're non-union movies. That is what I look at for anything that's not in the creative realm. But creative realm, you at least need to start with a reel of your work.
Got it. Alexis, go ahead. I want to hear from you. What's the hiring process like?
Well, to get hired, I normally like my first camera internships were really like I met Matt on one of the movies I was set PA on, and I told him how interested I was in the camera department and stuff. So it's like really being vocal about what you do, but also I've gotten jobs off of resumes. So compiling everything together and putting all of your camera experience on a resume, and even if it's still college experience, it's still something that you can show someone that you're interested in what you do.
Awesome. Sal, do you want to go ahead and answer if they left anything out of the hiring process for the camera department?
Yeah, I don't have much to add, but again, talking to people, letting them know. I mean, that was my biggest struggle. Like at the beginning, was not letting enough people know, hey, this is what I'm interested in. So that's definitely a big one.
Got it. Mandy, Brett, did we miss anything? They covered it.
Well, at the beginning, it's, a lot of sending out your resume and stuff, but then once people start to kind of know you, they'll start just like calling you, just be like, hey, can you do this starting next week or something like that? And at that point, like, I haven't sent in a resume for Well, no, that's not true. I did for Nightmare Alley. But before that, I hadn't sent in a resume for like a year, and I'd been working pretty consistently.
Yeah, it's a whole just it's this industry though. It's a relationships, it's a lot of phone calls. Hey, I work with you. Can you come on this? And like Matt said though, if you don't know people, you're looking at resumes and seeing what projects they've worked on, but it is a lot of just calling up people that you know and who you've worked with. So all right, we got to talk about what it's like on set, all these different positions, but once you get to set, what is it actually like? What are you doing? So we won't ask everyone, but we'll kind of just try to talk about some of the departments. So Sal, for you, we can go second AC. What does that day look like for a second AC?
Um, as a second, it's a lot of, I mean, I feel like Mandy and Alexis might speak better because I haven't seconded in a while, but it's keeping track of things and then just always listening. Like as a first, what I look for in a second is someone who's always listening to like what's going on. And like my favorite people to work with are the ones that are anticipating. And then we didn't really even talk about lens changing, but as like a second, you're going to be the one getting the lenses out of the case and handing them off to the first AC, and then putting them back into the case once you have the one coming off the camera. So lens changing, and then like I believe Alexis said, the camera reports, just keeping track of what's going on, because all of that information then goes into the producers and then files through to the editors, so they have that when they're putting the film together or commercial or whatever.
Matt, as the DP, the department head of camera, what does a day look like for a director of photography?
Usually I'm showing up early whenever I can, ahead of time to sit down with the director and just get a game plan for what we're doing for the day. There's kind of a process that most films usually follow, where you do like everybody gets there, okay. The different departments, camera departments, getting the cameras built, getting everything prepped. Well, that's usually going on. I might be with the director and the actors just doing a quick blocking rehearsal, figuring out what the blocking is going to be. And then we bring everybody in, show everybody, okay, this is the blocking rehearsal. Actors go to hair and makeup and get ready. I work with the gaffer and key grip to figure out how we're going to light it. And then I work with the camera operators, tell them where the camera is going to go. And then we shoot it. And that's your first scene of the day. And then it's rinse and repeat. And you just basically go through that for the day. So that's kind of like my on the day process. Obviously, there's a lot of prep that a director of photography has to do, but once you kind of get in there, you're just going day by day and just doing that same thing over and over again, until you get thrown a curveball, which happens all the time.
Got it. Brett, I kind of want to hear about as a still photographer, what would a day look like for a still photographer?
Yeah, you usually get a later call time than everybody else because you don't have much of a setup. Usually you come with your little Pelican with your camera and lenses, and basically you kind of set up next to camera. If it's, say it's day one, you start introducing yourself to the camera team, to the first assistant director, to your ACs, and just let them know that you're the guy that's going to be next to them for most of the shots. And if you're ever in their way, still photographer, gets the shots they can get, but does not impede the workflow of any department, especially a camera, since you're going to be next to the operator for most of the shot. You introduce yourself to the talent. So, you let the actors know that you're going to be taking pictures of them. So they're just aware of that. Some actors don't like being photographed, so they'll ask you to just photograph rehearsals. And that makes your job harder, but you have to respect the talent. If they don't want another lens, in their face, you have to respect that. And then as far as like the art stuff, you talk to the production designer or the director, and you start to get an idea of, the relationship between some of the actors. So you can set up a a photo shoot to show vacation pictures or a graduation party or whatever the scene may be.
We didn't really talk about this much, but you know, and whoever wants to answer, for you know, a camera intern, or what would their day look like on set? You know, or someone who's just coming in, what would a day look like for that person? Whoever wants to answer.
I can answer that. So as an intern myself, you know, I usually walked into set just searching for my ACs because I had no idea what to do. I had no idea what the job was, what their job was. I just know that we handle camera and lenses. So usually the ACs, when they get to set, they're pulling their carts off of the truck. For an intern, you usually focus on batteries. So you get everything that needs power. You know, you load the carts up. So in a camera truck, they'll have power and they'll be charging all the batteries overnight. So by the time you come in the morning, all the batteries will be charged. And while the ACs are pulling their carts off the truck, usually the intern or maybe the loader, they're pulling batteries off the chargers and stocking the carts. So there's all different kinds of batteries, and you have to make sure you have, you know, every electronic, be it an onboard monitor, which you pull focus off of, whether it's the camera, whether it's, you know, little Canon batteries to charge follow focus units. You're making sure those get to the carts and to your ACs with backups. So I guess when you're an intern and you come into the set, the first thing you want to do is, you know, get those electronics, their batteries that they need.
Who should they be reporting to?
Interns would report to the seconds. The first ACs, you know, they have a slew of other things they have to do at the beginning of the day, and you know, they're trying to fulfill the needs of the DP. And so they don't really need to hear what questions from the intern, and the second can handle those things. So as an intern, you want to report to the second ACs.
Got it. All right. Another thing that we're going to talk about is, and I won't do this for each individual position, it's more just for the entire camera department. So two of you can answer. Who is the camera department collaborating with most of the time on set? So whoever wants to answer that can answer first, but this isn't for individual positions. It's just talking in general for the whole department, is what other departments or what people are they interacting and collaborating with most? Whoever wants to take it.
I could take it again. As speaking as a second, because I've spent a lot of years being a second. When I go to the set and I'm wondering, like, okay, what am I writing on the slate? Usually I'll talk to the script supervisor. That's usually like who I buddy up with as an AC, as a second AC, I should say, because the script supervisor has all the information for the scene, whether it's, you know, a pickup shot, whether it's a scene they're adding, you know, those all matter. Because if the scene is just, you know, 8 apple, which is 8A, you'll write that on the slate. You know, they might in the middle of that shot, they might be like, we're going to do a pickup. We're going to start in the middle of this shot. We're not going to do the whole scene. So it would be 8 apple pickup instead of like 8 apple take 2 or something like that. So the script supervisor for the second is a good department to cling to.
Awesome. Alexis, do you want to add to that? What departments are you guys collaborating with the most on set?
Yeah, I mean, I'm department-wise, I'm mainly just like going to the scripty to get what scene we're on, like Brett said, and then a lot of what seconds do is I report to my first a lot of the time to just see what they hear from the operator while I'm setting up stuff throughout the day.
Matt, I know
Uh,
you talked about this in the beginning. Grip and electric, or whatever
Yeah.
you call it. Talk about how the DP and the camera department works very closely with those guys.
For me, I have a fairly close collaboration with a lot of different departments. Number one is my director. Number two and 2A are my key grip and gaffer, and then my camera operator. Those are probably the people I work closely with. Um, we don't really have anybody who's here representing camera operators too much, but a camera operator then will sometimes work with the grips a lot because you have your dolly grip. They're the ones who are setting up a slider for them. So there's a collaboration closely with camera operators in the grip department. Um, so I, at different stages throughout the camera department, I think different people have different collaborations with other groups. It really just depends on the position within the department that defines what those collaborations are.
Got it. Anybody want to add anything? Mandy, you good? Sal, you good?
Chilling. I'm good.
Okay. So
Jazlyn, I could say one more thing just in regards to first day seeing.
yeah, go ahead.
Cause we didn't really touch on, who they, what they do to start their day and, who they would talk to. And as a first, nobody's telling the camera department where the camera's going for the first shot. So it's up to the first to get that information. And usually the first AC would report directly to the DP to figure out where the first shot is. And that's happening while the seconds are unloading the truck and while the interns are getting the batteries. The first AC is talking to the DP to direct the other ACs on where to put the camera and where to set up the first shot. And that goes back to the second ACs. One of the first things they do is pull out the lens cart in the morning because more often than not, the DP is going to want to see a lens before any other department even lands on set. They want to start mapping out the shot.
Got it. Thank you, Brent. We talked about this already, so I won't really go into it, but if one person wants to add something, it's just like what are some things that you're looking for when hiring, and especially in the entry-level position? If one person just wants to add to that, they can add. If not, we can move forward. We good?
Can you say the question again?
Yes, what are some things that people that are hiring an entry-level camera position is looking for?
I'd say a good attitude. When you don't know anything, you just want somebody who is gonna do whatever it takes to get their request, be it a piece of gear off the truck, running to the store to pick up something that we don't have, anything like that. They just want a positive guy or girl who's gonna make their job easier.
Got it. Anybody else? No. Okay. So we're gonna get into. We have a couple more questions left. And again, anybody can answer this. Actually, I want to hear what everybody has to say for this. So we'll go in order. Sal. So what are some, tricks of the trade or just things that you wish you knew before you got into the camera department? And you're on mute, by the way.
I am on mute. No, that's a great question. Tricks of the trade. I don't know. Maybe come back.
I'll come back to you because
Yeah, that's a good one.
Mandy?
A loaded question.
Right? Or, what is something that, you wish you knew before you got into the camera department that you learned now?
I don't think I have anything that I wish I knew before I got in. I didn't have any expectations for anything. I didn't have any idea what I was getting myself into, really. Like, I'd been on set before. Sorry, my internet just did a weird thing. I'd been on set before and I'd seen what was going on, but like I didn't have any kind of expectation, so I don't think I had anything to add to that. I don't know.
Yeah. Brett, how about you?
Yeah, I have two things that I wish I kind of knew. I wish I knew if when you're working with two cameras, I wish I knew that they kind of act like separate departments in a way, because you don't mix their gear. A camera has its own specific set of gear, and B camera has their own specific set of gear, and they're labeled such as, usually A is red and B is blue. And like, you know, you might be using the exact same camera package. You could have the exact same amount of gear that is the exact same items, but you never mix the gear because it's like another department. You wouldn't pick up a grip C stand if your camera department, because it's all about knowing where all your gear is and knowing what, you know, if you have a cable that breaks, you don't go and grab A's, you grab usually a backup B cable. So now you know, you can tell the loader to buy a new B camera cable, because, you know, if I'm B camera and I lose a cable and I just go and grab A's and then they lose a cable and they don't have a backup anymore and B camera took theirs, it just becomes this unorganized, chaotic mess. So I kind of wish that, you know, I knew that, like, you know, A camera, though you're working completely with the other camera, they have their own specific set of gear that does not get mixed. And sure, if you have a down cable, you can then ask in your A camera, you can ask B camera for their backup, and they can be like, no problem. But as long as they know. That was one thing. And then the other thing is, you know, you come to set as an intern, and all the gear is already there. All the camera truck is set up, and everything looks great. And you kind of don't think about what it took to get there. And as an intern or somebody who is just coming to the camera department, there's this whole other side you don't see, which is the camera prep, the camera checkout, where you're checking out all the gear. Like, what does it take to check out of a rental company? So say you're renting for your camera packages from Panavision. Like, how do you get the package from Panavision to the camera truck, then to being on set? And you know, it's up to the ACs. You know, the DP orders the camera package, but then the ACs come to the rental house and they have to test all of that gear. So all of the gear you see, you have to test before it comes to set. Because what if you rent a monitor and it's not working, or a camera, God forbid, and then you show up to set and be like, Mr. DP, the camera won't turn on. Like, you have to figure all that out before prep, before day one of shooting. And that's what the checkout and prep is all about. Is you're checking and rechecking all of the gear. You're mapping out the lenses, so you know that their focal distance is accurate to the measurements on the barrel of the lens. And you know, you're getting comfortable with your camera cart, setting up all your gear. You know, every wireless follow focus, you on the bigger shows, you map out to lenses, and all this happens at prep. So you know, as a camera intern or a new person to camera, you're coming in and you don't kind of realize, you know, this whole other side of pre-production that you don't really see. So I kind of wish I knew about the AD camera thing, and I wish I knew what it takes to prep and check out of a rental company.
Yeah, and even just in terms of the whole movie process, is people just think this whole, you know, production crew shows up and just starts filming a movie, and it's like, you know, it's so much that happens before that with prep and just even in the creative stage. So yeah, it's a whole lot that goes into it before we even get to that point. So thanks for mentioning that, Brett.
Mm.
Alexis, what about you? Are there any, you know, like tricks of the trade, or just something that you wish you knew when you started?
Something I definitely wish I knew, like, before I had gotten on a film set at all, I didn't know any, like, I knew I wanted to be in the camera department, but I didn't know about the hierarchy of the camera department. So I think that's definitely important to know when going into it. Not only if you want to climb the camera department ladder, is that your ultimate goal, or if you want to, like, just be a specific thing, like if you want a second assistant camera all your life, or if you want to, like, go up the ladder. That's something, like, I wish I knew, just like the hierarchy in general, so then you could kind of plan out what your overall goal is.
Got it. No, I think that's a great point that you made, is like, you hear the camera department, but it's like, well, what are the actual positions in the camera department, and what do they all do to kind of figure out, what do I even want to, do in this kind of thing? It gives you a better idea once you go into it. Sal, I didn't forget, I'm coming back.
I mean, they all touched on great things. The other one, I guess, would be knowing the resources to figure out how each camera kind of works. I remember just like, even before I did anything in camera, just being amazed on like how much everyone knows about each camera and like how to go from here to there, and like the different resources and the ways to like look up how like the RE cameras work versus like the Reds, and everyone's got like different menu systems. And again, just like being prepared, as much going into it as you can.
Yeah, preparation is key.
Yeah.
With any of it, being prepared for all of it. So this is kind of a fun question, though. This is just, kind of seeing what everybody likes in their own personal taste. I guess, what movies and films or stories have your favorite cinematography? And so we'll start with Alexis and we'll work our way back up. So if you can think, whether it's, whatever it is, what have you watched and you saw and you said, wow, this camera work, this looks amazing?
I've been influenced by a lot of different things because, like, I've shot short films for friends, so, like, I've done background stuff and all of that. But, like, one that comes to mind that I really like how it looks is The Last Black Man in San Francisco. I think it's on Amazon Prime still, but I think a lot of just the lighting for not only people of color, but just, like, the shadow work in it, I really appreciate. And it's a good movie in general, too.
Got it. Say the name of it again and where they can possibly find it.
The Last Black Man in San Francisco, and I remember watching it on Amazon Prime. It should still be on it, but I'm not 100% sure.
Brett?
I guess the first, like, director that really stood out and I was able to kind of recognize that was this person just by watching their movies is Steven Spielberg, but primarily because my interest in film is usually the coming of age genre, or like, kid-driven dramas. And, Spielberg just, especially when his movies that involve kids, like E.T. or Hook's one of my favorite films, like he shoots those so specifically, and he has these shots that are unlike any other director, and it's just inspiring. And it was like the first director I was like, I could be watching one of his movies not knowing he directed it and see like a shot like that and be like, wait, this has got to be Spielberg, and sure enough it is.
Right. Mandy?
Well, Brett and I have very similar taste in movies, so he kind of kidnapped my answer on that. But I'm gonna say Jaws is probably my favorite example from Spielberg, at least, even though he's not a cinematographer, but he's a director. Yeah, similar to what Brett said, there's like just like a way that the films are shot that just like make them unique. I'm a big fan of having like sort of like a one take shot where like everything's very choreographed, but like you're not really noticing it. Like there's a lot of films that have come out recently that are like long steady cam one takes versus like in Jaws where it's like you set up the camera and it's like maybe dollying over for a little bit, but we're just kind of following the actor, versus like a very complicated shot. I like kind of simplicity with that stuff. I don't know.
Matt, you sure you want to add anything, or are you good?
I got one. If you've ever seen the movie The Fall, that has some amazing cinematography in it, especially if you're
Who
looking
directed
at.
it? The Fall. Who's the director?
Oh, I'm terrible at remembering names. I could only tell you the name of the movie. I have no idea who directed it or who the cinematographer was. But as far as an actual like look, it is a gorgeous looking film. Great landscape cinematography in there. They went to like, I don't know, 15 different countries to shoot the film, and there are so many unique looks to it. It's a beautiful looking movie.
The Fall. Okay.
The Fall, yes.
That's great. Sal?
I'm also a big fan of Spielberg, but
All right.
yeah, I know. But I also like Roger Deakins a lot as a DP. And then like a genre type, I'm a big fan of like the cyberpunk and like Blade Runner kind of stuff. That's, you know, if you could give me endless money to make any movie I'd want, that's the kind it'd be.
Got it. All right. So we're coming up to our last question, and I'm going to go around and ask everyone again because I think everybody, you know, can give their own advice or insight. So are there, you know, whether it's a documentary or a book or, you know, a website, whatever it is, are there any resources that you guys find helpful for working in the camera department or inspiring for your craft or to get jobs? Just whatever you find helpful as a person who works in the camera department that you kind of want to share and let other people know about. So we'll kind of go again and start from the bottom. Alexis, you can go first. Are there any tools or resources that you just find helpful or inspiring?
There's a few things. One, like, I feel it very inspiring to not only like consume a ton of movies and consume a ton of different styles, but also to observe operators and DPs that you're working with on set just to see where like their ideas come from or where they like how their eye is for the shot that they're coming up with. And then I also think just for ACing in general, I think like some people don't like YouTube as much, but I think YouTube's a really good source if you find the right people to just learn a few tricks here and there.
Got it. Brett?
Yeah, there's some books out there. There's one, I think it's called like Assistant Cameraman by David Hart. It's the most boring, driest book you ever won't read. So you could if you're super into reading, but you know, just watching videos on YouTube. I think the biggest thing is not being afraid to ask your ACs questions if you're an intern, because you know, ACs, I think people in general like talking about what they do, how they did it, and usually nobody's shy on helping out, you know, a young gunner trying to get into a position. And if you're in the camera department as a camera intern, it's your job to be asking all those questions too.
Andy?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way to learn things, like what Brett and Alexis said, is learning from the people that you're on set with, mostly. I know I've been on a couple shows where like I'm seconding and there's not a lot going on for me at a time, or they're doing like a really long take, and so I flipped over my sides and I'm like drawing out the lighting setup and like making notes of everything. So for me, that was very useful to like continue to learn that stuff. And yeah, like what Brett said, if you do happen to end up getting a camera intern position, just ask a lot of questions, because it might seem like a really dumb question, but like they know that you know nothing. So like camera people might tease you a bit, but but it's all out of love. But yeah.
Matt, you want to add anything, or are you good?
I mean, I'm on the same page as these guys. The best resources are the people around you. You know, you can even get inspired by the people. Like if I'm operating, I've looked through the lens and I've gone, wow, that DP did an amazing shot with this lighting setup. It looks gorgeous, and that inspires me right there. So for me, it's the same as what everybody else is saying. It's the people around you who can really be your best resource as well as your best inspiration.
Sal, last but not least.
Yeah. I was also gonna say with the asking questions thing, even in the department, I'm doing that, like on things that you don't quite like understand, because everyone has a different like way or saying of doing things. Um, like my first time not being a PA, they were like, hey, we need a S60, and I'm like standing in the room of lights, and I'm like, what is that? And they're like, oh, it's the sky panel. So it's like, and even when you're working with like an LA crew, they have a different way of saying things than like a New York crew. So yeah, again, like don't be afraid to ask questions, and like once you're like understanding more, it might just be that it's not that you don't know it, you just don't know their phrasing on the certain topic. And then more like specific resources to look up. I have a couple that are YouTube and non-YouTube based. And I don't know if we want to I can put these in the chat for people to look at or go out an email later. But there's YouTube's like Film Riot, Felicia Smith, and Aperture. They're all great when you just want to learn technical stuff, because especially the camera department is such an art world meeting a technical world, and I usually tackle problems from the technical side. Film Riot does a lot of stuff. Felicia Smith is an AC moving into a DP, and she works in Australia. And she's been doing, especially because of COVID, this series of videos on like all the different parts of the camera department. Aperture is a lighting company, but doing a lot of lighting setups. Indie Mogul does a lot. They do a lot of great cinematographer interviews. And then this, it's like Pony Smasher is the guy who, started a indie YouTube career and then went on to do Shazam and I believe the most recent Annabelle, and those kind of films. And it's just cool to listen to, people talking about what they do, especially from like a higher level like that. And then things that aren't YouTube, I have Shane Hurlbert's Hurlbert Academy. His stuff is kind of expensive, so that's kind of what you want to put into it, but it's a great resource. I have their assistant camera and their digital imaging technician courses. And that was a lot of just, again, learning things, but also reiterating what I thought I knew to confirm it, and learning different terminologies and ways to do it. And then last two I have are Donna Pro, which is an app on my iPhone that's a red simulator. And then Ari, there's a web-based simulator if you want to go through and look at menus and just start to understand cameras and how things are usually laid out. Every camera all does the same things, but they have different ways of doing it. So, I learned one style in college, and then, I'm handed a camera for the first time from a different brand. And, you feel like you don't know anything because things are just in weird spots. So yeah, that was like useful, especially learning like how to change stuff based off of what you already know to how each camera manufacturer does stuff.
Thank you, Sal. That was definitely a lot. I mean, if we can find a way to get it in the chat, or, whether we send out another email, if we can kind of just give them the list of the names of these things. Because that was that.
I have it with links as well.
And I just want to say I did lie. We have another question. I feel like I would not be doing my job if I did not ask this question. And after this final question, we'll open it up for Q&A for everyone who has it. But as far as the camera department, we know that the camera department is a majority white male dominated industry. And so for Alexis and Mandy, as, women coming up, what has your experience been like, stepping into this industry in this department that is mainly driven by men? Mandy, you can go first, and then Alexis. And then I want to hear from the guys of, something from your point of view too. But Mandy, go ahead. You go first.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I've dealt with a lot of kind of not so great dudes.
Yeah.
Most of the time, the local people are like Buffalo, and I also work in Syracuse a lot. A lot of the time, those people are really awesome. They're really chill. Sometimes if you get people from that like you don't necessarily know before or anything, they're taking like heavy things out of your hands, and like you get called sweetie and stuff like that, and just people think that you're incapable of doing your job. And I'm also like small too, so like that doesn't help when with like the heavy shit, pushing carts and stuff like that. People will like grab onto my cart who aren't in the department even, like they'll try to push it for me, and I'm like, I do this for 12 hours a day every day, please don't touch my cart. So if you run into somebody like that, the first time I ran into someone like that, I kind of just like backed off into the background, and that was not the way to do it. But I was also like 19 or 20 or something like that, and I just like was scared. So I think you have to kind of demand your respect in a way. Like you deserve respect, and if these people are giving you a hard time, it's you have to show them that you know what you're doing. So yeah, but yeah, I mean, generally people are really cool and very accepting of women coming in and stuff like that. But you do get people every now and again who are kind of tougher.
Thanks. Alexis?
A lot of what Mandy said, and it's funny because any of the like kind of not really discrimination, but like giving a hard time has come from people outside of the camera department. Like I had someone ask me one time, like, "Oh, why are you the one stuck pushing the heavy cart?" And I'm like, "That's a part of my job," type thing. So it's like when they don't understand my job, but it's also just like it's not something to question. Like I'm fully capable of doing my job, and so it's stuff like that that you just kind of gotta persevere through. And like if it bothers you to an extent, I believe in like saying something to them, even like not mean, but like just kind of bringing it up in a side conversation, saying, "Hey, I don't appreciate how you approach the situation and it's kind of been bothering me," type thing. Like not to cause any trouble or something, but just make sure you stand up for yourself.
And if it's something really bad, like somebody's like kind of harassing you, go to somebody in a position of power. Like usually if you go to like one of the ADs, they can handle it. Somebody in a position of power, because it can be a problem sometimes, where people are bothering you inappropriately, and it is not necessarily your job to handle that.
And I want to talk to the men really quick, and this will just be, you guys can just say something for a minute, and then we'll open it up to Q&A, so this won't be long. But I want to hear from you guys. How do you make sure, or how will you make sure moving forward that, as more women step into this role, that you're creating a department and environment that is comfortable for them and is not allowing, whether it's, microaggressions or sexual harassment? How are you guys making sure that that is a safe place for women and for men? Go ahead. Sal, you can answer first, and then we'll go to Matt and then Brett.
Yeah, I mean, I have a zero tolerance policy for that. And if like, or depending on what position I'm in, if it's not something able to be resolved, it's usually, someone I'll never work with again. Kind of situation. Sometimes you are stuck with working again with those people, but if you're the hiring person, that's really an eye-opening thing. And then in the city, on my last shoot, we had an issue, not someone from the camera department, but was a person saying not great things, and like, those kind of like whispers behind the backs comments. And, I feel like, I mean, personally on that set, it was a very open set to talk about things, and that person, was gone the next day. So, don't put up with that. And always, you make friends on set. So be willing to tell your friends like what's going on. And like it climbs up the chain for the most part, or at least on the sets I've been on, that like let people know this is going on. And, again, for the sets I've been on, it's always been dealt with.
Got it. Thanks, Matt.
So for me, I can maybe talk about it from a hiring standpoint, because usually I'm trying to bring on crew to jobs. I would say I personally like to try and have as diverse a crew as possible. I've brought both Alexis and Mandy on different jobs, but I think it's important to recognize that having diversity at the end of the day, regardless of position, helps everybody do their job better, because you have more perspectives to bring to that job, and everybody has different life experiences. And by having that diversity, you have those experiences rise to you that help you do better in general. So I, from a hiring standpoint, try and find people who have different backgrounds, who have different experiences than myself.
Got it. Thank you. And last but not least, Brett.
Yeah, if I've witnessed sexual harassment on set. Luckily, if that happens to you or you see it, it's important to say something. And I know that's probably easier said than done. Luckily, if you're part of a union, you can report that stuff anonymously, and the union will take care of it for you. But if you're not a part of the union, and it's not a union show, which is probably going to be a lot of people's first experiences, talk to somebody you're comfortable with talking to. If you feel like you're all alone and this is still happening, as hard as it must be, there's a value in quitting, because that show needs you. And if they're making you feel uncomfortable, sometimes it speaks a lot to just step down. But that's a last resort, and hopefully it would never come to that. As far as hiring and diversity, I think the film industry as a whole is definitely more aware now more than ever. When we were shooting The Purge, granted the DP was white, but he made a point to hire an almost exclusive African American camera department where possible. With a camera department of almost 10 people, I would say there was probably 7 African Americans filling the department, from the 2 camera operators, the A and B operators, to the still photographer, to the 2 first ACs. They were all African American. So that was pretty cool. And then same with women. There's more when different ethnicities and genders start to fulfill these bigger roles, you start to see more diversity, which is great. And when you get to second ACs do a bunch of hiring as well, the more diversity you see on set, the more it trickles down, because the DP will hire the operators, the DP will probably hire the first, but the first will hire the seconds, and the seconds will hire the interns. And like the more you get, take Mandy for an example. She's a second. We might need an intern. She could be liable to bring in another female intern, or if there's an African American or Latino or whatever, different ethnicity second, they could hire. Yeah. it trickles down, which is great. And the film industry in whole is definitely more aware of this and trying to promote diversity.
Yeah, definitely. And I think just, quickly from a woman's point of view, whether it's in your department, I think sometimes you hear a lot of women who don't say anything. And so I think it's really important within your department for the other guys to hold that person accountable and make it known, like, listen, we don't tolerate that. Because sometimes
Yes.
go for the woman to be the one to report it, because now it's like, oh, now you're like, I feel ashamed because now I have to report this and now people are going to look at me weird. So it's just important for you guys and everybody to hold their people on their crew accountable and just let it be known that, we don't tolerate that. So I want to thank you. Go ahead, Brett.
I also think, if you're in the camera department, you're a camera team. And if you see something happening like that, on set, but especially in your department, I think it's important for your department to stick together. And if that problem isn't remedied, you have the power as a whole camera department to make, the change happen where you want to see it. Because, maybe they can stand to lose a female intern, but they can't stand to have the whole camera department drop out because of it.
Yeah.
And it's important to stick together like that.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you guys so much for, taking the time to chat. And so I want to open it up now to Q&A. So if anyone has a question, you guys can definitely unmute your mic and then ask the question, and then we'll respond accordingly. So any questions, go ahead.
I have a few, if that's okay. Can you hear me okay through?
I can hear you, Kyle. Go ahead.
Cool. Okay. So we've kind of talked about this before, but I just want to clarify. Is there actually a position called camera operator, or does another role kind of take that? Like, who presses record, who stands by the camera, is that like usually first AC, or how does that work?
Yeah, there's a camera operator position. And since you asked the question, yeah, the first AC does hit record.
I have a question. So my background as of right now is mostly in theater. So as far as sending in a resume and everything, is that acceptable to send in a theater resume and you're like trying to break into the film industry? How is that,
I know. So are you specifically interested in camera department, or?
Right now, yes, I'm interested in the camera department.
Are you just speaking for film in general?
As of right now, yeah, I'm interested in the camera department. So, yeah.
Okay, so I mean, if you're submitting for like a camera intern position or any kind of resume will do, I guess.
Okay.
I mean, that's what I had. And any film thing you can throw on there, like any level of anything. I don't know. Does anyone else elaborate on that?
I can say what people don't want to see on a resume. If you're applying for an internship position, they don't. I would say nobody is that interested that you directed, produced, did all these high up positions, and then applying for camera or intern. It just kind of is a little goofy. You can mention, if you get an interview, you can mention like, I have directed or DP'd a couple of stuff, so I'm familiar with some of the gear. If you can turn your experiences into how it can relate to your position, that's worth mentioning. But if you directed, a college movie that got into a reputable film festival, that's not that impressive when it comes to camera department, because how does that help you get me my TV Logic onboard monitor from the camera truck?
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I was gonna say, I do a lot of like color grading and things like that from my home studio, and I've done a lot of like work in camera departments on like really very small projects, and I've gotten interested in the role of DIT because it's kind of like an intermediary between, you know, on set and going into post. I was wondering if any of you have worked with DITs or have any experience with that part of the process.
Uh, on bigger films, I've gotten to work with the DIT closely because they'll be on set sometimes with me, actually doing like live grading and stuff, so I can, as the DP, be like, "Hey, could you shift that color a little bit more towards the blue or whatever?" So I have had experience working closely with DITs before. Is there
On
is
a
there?
on a on a smaller scale, like a lot of like indie movies will not have a DIT because it's in a lot of respects it's a luxury position. On a union set, they're almost essential. But so if you're trying to, I think for you specifically, you're just trying to gain on-set experience. Um, so if you notice, if like a film comes up to you and asks if you want to be a camera intern or camera whatever, or even just like a set PA, maybe it could be worthwhile that you can say, hey, I'm trying to be a DIT. I would love to speak to your DP and see if you can get on as a DIT in some capacity and for free, do it for free, because it's that free labor that is going to get people to know who you are, and that's how you start getting the paid gigs because you become essential to that person. And if so, unfortunately, DIT is a highly technical position, and the DP trusts them completely. Sometimes they'll trust them with the exposure of the shot, for you to change it in the middle of the shot, and that takes a trust you have to build over many shows.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Going back to the camera interning question. So I teach college students, and we've had a few students who've been able to get on film set, which has been great, but I know a lot of them are, shy, and kind of navigating the networking is a little overwhelming as a young college student. And in addition to that, just the schedule required for being on set does not allow you to be a college student at the same time. So one thing that we're wondering about is how would we encourage students to network during the school year without being on a set in order to hopefully get on a set during the summer, when there are productions still being shot. It seems like a bit of a tricky path, and I'm wondering if anyone has any thoughts on that.
Well, when I was in school, I was interning part-time sometimes. So if there was a film in town, I took an office intern position, and I would go in 3 days a week after my classes and help them with whatever. And that's how I met a lot of really good people who helped me get into the department that I wanted to get into ultimately. So, I mean, figuring out what your schedule is and like just honestly booking it with whatever you can. It's a lot of hours, and like I get being a full-time student and then going and working 5 hours on a film set is a lot for free because you're an intern. But ultimately, it will get you on the sets during the summer and whatever breaks, as long as you're like doing a good job for them. So just booking all the time that you have.
On the smaller shows, on the smaller shows, it's a little easier to do that. Unfortunately, on the bigger union ones, you know, your whole department, you know, eventually relies on, and they need you present the whole time. For the bigger films, but for smaller projects, you can do what Mandy was saying, and you can, if you know your schedule, they can arrange you for certain days.
A lot of it too, when I was going through scheduling and stuff, because I was planning to like work full time and stuff, it was a lot of saying, okay, so these days of the week I'm in class, and I would book up. So say there's Monday through Friday schedule, and there's college classes Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or like certain production classes kids need to take. I would book up my schedule only on those days, so that I was completely free at least 2 days of the week, so I could make myself available to go to set.
Yeah.
And or have like an internship and stuff.
We don't have that arrangement set up for our senior students, which is nice. On that note, if anyone, I'm happy to provide my contact info. So if anyone is looking for interns on anything they're working on coming up, I'm happy to provide my contact info and communicate with you on that further. Sorry, Sal, to you there.
I also just want to add that, you know, for anyone who is located in Buffalo, there's a couple Facebook groups that we have, and one is like the Buffalo Niagara Film Professionals, and there's another one like Actors Helping Actors, but on the Buffalo Niagara Film Professionals website, they post a lot of gigs in there. So if people add themselves to that, they'll be able to see when there's a movie in town, you know, when there's something shooting or when there's something about to come. And so it's a good way for that individual to just be aware of what's happening. And people will post, you know, when they're looking for different people to hire. And so you can always post on there too and say, hey, you know, I'm an intern. Is there any small gigs around? I'm free Tuesday, Thursdays. Can I come and intern? And even if there's not a movie, they can post on there and say, listen, if anybody in the camera department is working on their own project, or if you just need help on something, I'd come to help you out. And so now that way you've established a relationship with them and they can take you again. But definitely have them check out the Facebook group. And we can send it in a link again for people who might not be aware of it, who want to know about it. And it's here right now in the chat, so you can go to it. It's Buffalo Niagara Film Professional. So that's a great resource in Buffalo where we post gigs and, you know, when people are hiring. So that's something that if you're talking about students, they should be up on that and they should be aware of it. But do we have any other questions from anyone?
Yeah, so for the still photographer, you said that's a position in the camera department. Where does that fall with like behind the scenes videographer? Is that a thing as well?
Yeah, so that's a completely different position. That's called EPK, which stands for Electronic Press Kit. So like the still photographer definitely takes behind the scenes photos, but it's kind of like you do 10% behind the scenes and 90% like on set still photography. But as far as like the interviewing, you know, like the actors or the crew members, or shooting behind the scenes video, that's a whole separate like 1 or 2 man show.
So does the script supervisor also take still photography for like continuity, or is that all through the still photographer?
So you'll when you're on set, you'll find almost every department is snapping photos of the monitor, but those are all for their own personal continuity measures. So none of them really contribute to the movie, other than, you know, knowing, okay, in this shot, the actor raised her left arm, not her right. So the still photographer, you know, if they're in a super, super pinch and the script be bricked hard, the still photographer might have some photos for continuity's sake, but it's rarely, if ever, used for that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, just the last 2 brief questions. So what department is the script supervisor in, and what are bongo ties? I heard that mentioned earlier. So that's all.
Bongo ties are an AC's best friend. They're Sal, you got one handy?
No, I'm out of my New York City apartment. I was like, do I have one still here?
I got one. Hold on.
Basically, they're like a rubber band with a little like piece of wood. I think originally they were like bamboo. Yeah, and
Oh, Alexis and Brett.
yeah, you can like use them to like tie anything together, basically. Yeah, and everyone gets their own colors, and everyone does pretty fun things with them. But yeah, you just wrap them around, and you can like tie cables together. Like when I'm building the camera, you're gonna have a lot of cables running from the back where the battery is to different parts on the front. So I'll bongo tie a bunch of them together, so it's not just kind of like cable spaghetti on the side of the monitor or the camera.
Aesthetic is clutch for a nicely built camera. It's got to look good too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that has practical uses, other than looking good. The operator doesn't want to have a face full of cables running through his eyepiece. And if it's a handheld thing, like you have a loose cable, if they're going through like a doorway, it gets snagged on something and you could screw up the shot. So yeah, bungo ties help with that. And a whole bunch of other expendables help with that.
And then your other question, Scripty, they're their own department. Yeah, so that's a lot of like different departments working with the script supervisor, but they're not really part of a different department.
Okay, so who's in the scripty department then? Is that just the script supervisor, or do they have like their own PAs and all that?
Yeah,
it's just one.
Yeah.
But that position is totally unoccupied in Buffalo. So if any of you young gunners want it, it's up for grabs.
Take it.
It'll be under continuity on the call sheet.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Any other questions? Anyone else?
I had a question. Is it possible that I've heard different things on this, like to sustain a career in this, like in this area, or would you have to move to? I mean, obviously you guys are doing it here, but would you need to move to like a larger city like New York or Los Angeles, or could you find film-related jobs just in, let's say, the upstate New York region?
I can answer that. I did move away, but that was before Buffalo. I'd say like around the time Ninja Turtle shot here was kind of like the beginning of everything in Buffalo. So I moved when I went to college, and I graduated in 2010. I moved right to New Orleans because there was nothing but kind of local commercials and maybe your slasher horror flicks shooting here in Buffalo. But now there's enough union and non-union work to sustain a career locally. It's still very competitive. Even when I moved to New Orleans, which was bustling with film, my first year, I think I made $7,000 as a movie extra. So it's going to be hard. Breaking in is the hardest part of it. So it's very advantageous to move to another city, sure. Sometimes there's more opportunities, but especially considering the climate now with coronavirus and everything, everybody's kind of like at the same playing field. But Buffalo has got so much coming here. We're working on so much. I think Buffalo is a safe bet if you want to stay here. I think it's absolutely possible, but make no mistake, wherever you go, it's going to be hard to break in.
I think another thing you have to consider is everybody has a different standard for what sustainability is. Some people might be able to get by on, $20,000 a year. Some people need more than that. So I think you have to look at where you are and what you need and decide what is doable for you. I don't think that question can be just blanket answered for everybody the same. I have friends who are always like, when I can, I'm moving to New York, or I'm moving to LA. That's because they have a different level that they consider to be sustainable for them. So it's kind of a personal decision as well. I've been here doing film work consistently before coronavirus since 2012, and have worked regularly and been able to survive. So you know, that's just based on my lifestyle and what I can do.
Yeah. And then,
Not speak from a not camera department, but just being honest, the winters are tough. Like you'll have a lot of work in spring and summer and fall, but it's Buffalo winter. So there's, to be honest, not a lot filming there. So if you can save your money, or if you decide to say, hey, I'll work in Buffalo in the spring and summer and a little bit of fall and leave and go to New York or somewhere else and work in the winter months, like on a TV show that's on a stage, that's an option. And that's what I've been doing for a little bit. But yeah, and then also if we can take one more question because we're going a little long. So if anyone else has one more question, and then we'll start to wrap things up.
if there is another question out, I can just tap on the last one real quick.
Go ahead, Sal.
Like what Jazlyn just said, I worked in the city. Like I moved to the city this past year, and worked here. And there was actually on the set I worked on during this winter, a lot of people from Buffalo came down and would work, you know, like a long weekend or like 3 days here, you know, a week here, and just get like a hotel or an apartment for that time, and figure like the cost of the apartment versus the cost of the income. The other thing to keep in mind too is that it's not all just feature films. Most of my income is music video and commercial based, and that's a huge part of, you know, like income and work, because only so many films come into town. But you know, every business needs a commercial at some point or another, or just something to put on their website. And to kind of piggyback that off of the question about college students as interns, what I did in college is I lined my schedule up so that Tuesday and Fridays would be off. And for some reason, a lot of commercials shoot, you know, Tuesdays and Fridays, or even if that wasn't happening, if they were shooting like a Wednesday, Thursday, I would ask, hey, are you prepping the camera package on Tuesday, day before? And can I like come, like, you know, help you guys, you know, put it all together, figure it out, get a little hands-on with like a lens or a camera body to learn more. And usually a prep, depending on the size and how big like the camera package is and how big the shoot is a great time to ask questions as well. When you're like, oh, what does, you know, this cable do kind of situation. I know everyone has their own like preferences on a prep, if they just want to like, you know, get through it and be organized. But personally, that's a time that I'm more willing to answer questions. But yeah, just commercials, there's a lot going on there. And, you know, there's a lot that can lead your way into camera team, even if you can't be there on the actual shoot day, I feel like, personally.
And like on top of that, like Brett and I are both Buffalo residents for our union, but like we'll get pulled out to like Syracuse to work. So it's not exclusively like exactly where you live all the time. Like if you know somebody who's working on a movie out of town and they're like, hey, I need a second AC, they'll call you and then you can go work out wherever they are.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Sal, Matt, Mandy, Brett, and Alexis. And everyone, thank you guys so much for joining. Just two last things that I want to mention before we leave is obviously this is all free of charge. You know, everyone is just doing this because they want to help out. But if you guys could graciously, there is an organization that we would love if you guys could donate to. It's the LGBTQ Fund. And obviously just in lieu of participating in today's seminar. So the link is actually in the chat. So if you guys would just feel free to donate to that fund today for participating in today's seminar, we would really appreciate it. And also there is going to be another seminar coming up, and that's also going to be in post-production. So the dates right now are still TBD, so we don't know exactly when, but they will be updating their website and their social media. So if you're interested in that, or you know anyone who is interested in post-production, you know, let them know, and obviously let them know that they'll be announcing the dates soon to come. So just stay up to date. They're going to have a ton of more seminars and lots more information to come. And again, check out the fund to donate to and also the Facebook group to stay up to date of what's going on in Buffalo. So thank you everybody for joining. Thank you to Sal, Matt, Mandy, Brett, and Alexis. Thank you. And also thank you to Film Neighborhood Network for, providing this and for setting this all up. Without them, obviously this would not be happening. So thank you all so much.